Alright everyone, I'm reading Global Woman by Arlie Hochschild, and I'm finishing last chapter, chapter 6, so I'm just going to launch right into it. The most interesting feature of the cleaning service chains, at least from an abstract historical perspective, is that they are finally transforming the home into a fully capitalist-style workplace, and in ways that the old wages for housework advocates could never have imagined. A house is an innately difficult workplace to control, especially a house with 10 or more rooms, like so many of them we cleaned. Workers may remain out of one another's sights for many minutes, as much as an hour at a time. For independents, the ungovernable nature of the home workplace means a certain amount of autonomy. They can take breaks, though this is probably ill-advised if the homeowner is on the premises. They can ease the monotony by listening to the radio or television while they work. But cleaning services lay down rules meant to enforce a factory-like or even convent-like discipline on their far-flung employees. At the maids, there were no breaks except for a daily 10-minute stop at a convenience store for coffee or lunch, meaning something like a slice of pizza. Otherwise, the time spent driving between houses was considered our break and was the only chance to eat, drink, or although this was also officially forbidden, smoke a cigarette. When the houses were spaced well apart, I could eat the sandwich I packed each day in one sitting. Otherwise, it would have to be divided into as many as 3 separate hasty snacks. Within a customer's house, nothing was to touch our lips at all, not even water. On hot days, I sometimes broke that rule by drinking from a bathroom faucet. Televisions and radios were off limit, and we were never ever to curse out loud, even in an ostensibly deserted house. There might be a homeowner secreted in some locked room, we were told, ear pressed to the door, or more likely, a tape recorder or video camera running. At the time, I dismissed this as a scary story, but I have since come across ads for concealable video cameras like the Tech 7 incredible coin-sized camera designed to get a visual record of your babysitter's actions and watch employees to prevent theft. It was the threat of or rumor of hidden recording devices set up by customers to catch one of us stealing that provided the final capitalist industrial touch, supervision. But what makes the work most factory-like is the intense tailorization imposed by the companies. An independent or a person cleaning his or her own home chooses where she will start, and within each room probably tackles the most egregious dirt first. Or she may plan her work more or less ergonomically, first doing whatever can be done from a standing position and then squatting or crouching to reach the lower levels. But with the special systems devised by the cleaning services and imparted to employees through training videos, there are no such decisions to make. In the maid's Healthy Touch system, which is similar to what I saw of the Merry Maid's system on the training tape I was shown during my interview, all cleaning is divided into 4 task areas: dusting, vacuuming, kitchens, and bathrooms, which are in turn divided among the team members. For each task area, other than vacuuming, there is a bucket of containing rags and the appropriate cleaning fluids, so the biggest decision an employee has to make is which fluid and scrubbing instrument, rag, brush, or Dobie brand plastic scouring pad, to deploy on which kind of service. Almost everything else has been choreographed in advance. When vacuuming, you begin with a master bedroom. When dusting, with the first room off the kitchen, then you move through the rooms going left to right. When entering each room, you proceed from left to right and top to bottom, and the same with each surface, left to right, top to bottom. Deviations are subject to rebuke, as I discovered when a team leader caught me moving my arm from right to left, then left to right, while wiping Windex over a French door. It's not easy for anyone with extensive cleaning experience, and I include myself in this category, to accept this loss of autonomy over her movements from minute to minute. But I came to love the system. First, because if you hadn't always been traveling rigorously from left to right, it would have been easy to lose your way in some of the larger houses and to omit or redo a room. Second, many of our houses were already clean when we started, at least by any normal standards, thanks probably to a housekeeper who kept things up between our visits. But the absence of visible dirt did not mean there was less work to do, for no surface could ever be neglected. So it was important to have the system to remind you of where you had been and what you had already cleaned. No doubt the biggest advantage of the system, though, is that it helps you achieve the speed demanded by the company, which allots only so many minutes per domicile, from about 45 for a smallish apartment, up to several hours per house. After a week or 2 on the job, I found myself moving robot-like from surface to surface, grateful to have been relieved of the thinking process. Even ritual work, however, takes its toll on those assigned to perform it. Turnover is dizzyingly high in the cleaning service industry, and not only because of the usual challenges that confront the working poor, including childcare problems, unreliable transportation, evictions, and prior health conditions. As my long-winded interviewer at Merry Maids warned me, and as my coworkers at the Maids confirmed, this is a physically punishing occupation, something to tide you over for a few months, not year after year. The hands and knees posture damages knees, with or without pads. Vacuuming strains the back. Constant wiping and scrubbing invite repetitive stress injuries even in the very young. In my 3 weeks as a maid, I suffered nothing more than a persistent muscle spasm in the right forearm, from scrubbing, I suppose, but the damage would have been far worse if I'd had to go home every day to my own housework and children, as most of my co-workers did, instead of returning to my motel and indulging in the daily after-work regimen of ice packs and stretches. Chores that seem effortless at home, even almost recreational when undertaken at will, for 20 minutes or so at a time, quickly turn nasty when performed hour after hour, with few or no breaks and under relentless time pressure. So far, the independent entrepreneurial house cleaner is holding her own, but there are reasons to think that corporate cleaning services will eventually dominate the industry. New users often prefer the impersonal, standardized service offered by the chains, and in a fast-growing industry, new users make up a sizable chunk of the total clientele. Government regulation also favors the corporate chains, whose spokesmen speak gratefully of the Zoe Baird effect, referring to customers' worries about being caught employing an undocumented immigrant. But the future of house cleaning may depend on the entry of even bigger players into the industry. Mary Maids, the largest of the chains, has the advantage of being a unit within the $6.4 billion Service Master conglomerate, which includes such related businesses as True Green, ChemLawn, Terminix, Rescue Rooter, and Furniture Medic. A few other large firms are testing or have tested the water. Johnson Wax acquired Molly Maid in 1987 to 88, then abandoned it, according to a Molly Maid spokesperson, because the wax people were too product-oriented for the relational culture of a service-providing company. Swisher Maids in Georgia, Swisher International, best known as an industrial toilet cleaning service, is operating Swisher Maids in Georgia and North Carolina, and Sears may be feeling its way into the business too. If large multinational firms establish a foothold in the industry, the mobile customers sociologist Saskia Sassen calls the new transnational professionals will be able to find the same branded and standardized product wherever they relocate. For the actual workers, the change will, in all likelihood, make a more standardized and speeded up approach to the work, with less freedom of motion and fewer chances to pause. The trend toward outsourcing the work of the home seems at the moment unstoppable. 200 years ago, women manufactured soap, candles, cloth, and clothing in their own homes, and the complaints of some women at the turn of the 20th century that they had been robbed by the removal of creative work from the home sound pointlessly reactionary today. Not only have the skilled crafts like sewing and cooking from scratch left the home, but many of the white-collar tasks are on their way out too. For a fee, new firms like San Francisco-based Le Concierge and Cross It Off Your List in Manhattan will pick up dry cleaning, babysit pets, buy groceries, deliver dinner, even do the Christmas shopping, with other firms and individuals offering to buy your clothes, organize your financial files, straighten out your closets and drawers, wait around your home for the plumber to show up. Why would anyone want to hold on to the toilet cleaning? Absent a long-term souring of the economy, there is every reason to think that Americans will become increasingly reliant on paid housekeepers, and that this reliance will extend over further into the middle class. For one thing, there is no reason to expect that men will voluntarily take on a greater share of the burden, and much of the need for paid help arises from their abdication. As for children, once a handy source of household help, they are now off at soccer practice or SAT prep classes, and grandmother has relocated to warmer weather or taken up a second career. Furthermore, despite the fact that people spend less time at home than ever, the square footage of new homes swelled by 39% between 1971 and 1996 to include family rooms, home entertainment rooms, home offices, bedrooms, and often a bathroom for each family member. By the second quarter of 1999, 17% of new homes were larger than 3,000 square feet, which is usually considered the size threshold for household help, or the point at which a house becomes unmanageable to the people who live in it. One more trend impels people to hire outside help, according to cleaning expert Cheryl Mendelson. Fewer Americans know how to clean or even to straighten up. I hear this from professional women defending their decision to hire a maid. I'm just not very good at it myself, or I wouldn't really know where to begin. Since most of us learn to clean from our parents, usually our mothers, any diminution of cleaning skills is transmitted from one generation to the next like a gene that can, in the appropriate environment, turn out to be lethal or disabling. Upper middle-class children raised in the servant economy of the early 21st century are bound to grow up as domestically incompetent as their parents, and no less dependent on others to clean up after them. Mendelson sees this as a metaphysical loss, a matter of no longer being physically centered in your environment. Having cleaned the rooms of many overprivileged teenagers during my stint with the maids, I think the problem is a little more urgent than that. The American overclass is raising a generation of young people who will, without constant assistance, suffocate in their own detritus. If there are moral losses too, as Americans increase their reliance on paid household help, no one has been tactless enough to raise them. Almost everything we buy, after all, is the product of some other person's suffering and miserably underpaid labor. I clean my own house, but I can hardly claim purity in any other area of consumption. I buy my jeans at the Gap, which is reputed to subcontract to sweatshops. I tend to favor decorative objects no doubt ripped off by their purveyors from scantily paid third-world craftspersons. Like everyone else, I eat salad greens picked by migrant farm workers, some of them possibly children, and so on. We can try to minimize the pain that goes into feeding, clothing, and otherwise provisioning ourselves by observing boycotts, checking for a union label, and so on. But there is no way to avoid it altogether without living in the wilderness on berries. Why should housework, among all the goods and service we consume, arouse any special angst? Yet it does, as I have found in conversations with liberal-minded employers of maids, perhaps because we all sense that there are ways in which housework is different from other products and services. First is its inevitable proximity to the activities that constitute private life. The home that becomes a workplace for other people remains a home, even when that workplace is minutely regulated by the corporate cleaning chains. Someone who has no qualms about purchasing rugs woven by child slaves in India or coffee picked by ruined peasants in Guatemala might still hesitate to tell dinner guests that, surprisingly enough, his or her lovely home doubles as a sweatshop during the day. You can eschew the chain cleaning services, of course, hire an independent cleaner at a generous hourly wage, and even encourage, at least in spirit, the unionization of the house cleaning industry. And of course you should do all these things if you are an employer of household help. But none of this will change the fact that someone is working in your home at a job she would almost certainly never have chosen for herself, if she'd had a college education, for example, or was a native-born American with good English skills. Or that the place where she works, however enthusiastically or resentfully, is the same as the place where you sleep. It is also the place where your children are raised, and what they learn pretty quickly is that some people are less worthy than others. Even better wages and working conditions won't erase the hierarchy between an employer and his or her domestic help, since the help is usually there only because the employer has something better to do with her time. As one report on the growth of cleaning services puts it, not noticing the obvious implication that the cleaning person herself has nothing better to do with her time. In a merely middle-class home, the message may be reinforced by a warning to the children that that's what they'll end up doing if they don't try harder in school. Housework, as radical feminists once proposed, defines a human relationship, and when unequally divided among the social groups, reinforces pre-existing inequalities. Dirt, in other words, tends to attach to the people who remove it, garbage men and cleaning ladies. Or, as cleaning entrepreneur Don Aslett told me with some bitterness, and this is a successful man, the chairman of the board of an industrial cleaning service and a frequent television guest, the whole mentality out there is that if you clean, you're a scumbag. Increasingly often, the house cleaner is a woman of color and a recent arrival from the third world, so that the implicit lesson for the household's children is that anyone female with dark skin and broken English is a person of inferior status, someone who has nothing better to do. What we risk as domestic work is taken over by immigrant workers is reproducing, within our own homes, the global inequalities that so painfully divide the world. There is another lesson the servant economy teaches its beneficiaries, and most troublingly, the children among them. To be cleaned after is to achieve a certain magical weightlessness and immateriality. Almost everyone complains about violent video games, but paid house cleaning has the same consequence-abolishing effect. You blast the villain into a mist of blood droplets and move right along. You drop the socks knowing they will eventually levitate, laundered and folded, back to their normal dwelling place. The result is a kind of virtual existence in which the trail of glitter that follows you seems to evaporate all by itself. Spill syrup on the floor and the cleaning person will scrub it off when she comes on Wednesday. Leave the Wall Street Journal scattered around your airplane seat and the flight attendants will deal with it after you've deplaned. Spray toxins into the atmosphere from your factory smokestacks and they will be filtered out eventually by the lungs of the breathing public. A servant economy may provide opportunities, however limited, for poor and immigrant women, but it also breeds callousness and solipsism in the served, and it does so all the more effectively when the service is performed close up and routinely in the place where they live and reproduce. Individual situations vary, of course, in ways that elude blanket judgment. Some people, the elderly and disabled, parents of new babies, asthmatics who require an allergen-free environment, may well need help performing what nursing home staffers call the ADLs, or activities of daily living, and no shame should be attached to their dependency. In a more generous social order, housekeeping services would be subsidized for those who have health-related reasons to need them, a measure that would generate a surfeit of jobs for the entry-level workers who now clean the homes of the affluent. And in a less gender-divided social order, husbands and boyfriends would more readily do their share of the chores. The growing servant economy, with all the quandaries it generates, is largely a result of men's continuing abdication from their domestic responsibilities. However, we resolve the issue in our individual homes. The moral challenge is, put simply, to make work visible again. Not only the scrubbing and vacuuming, but all the hoeing, stacking, hammering, drilling, bending, and lifting that goes into creating and maintaining a livable habitat. In an ever more economically unequal world, where so many of the affluent devote their lives to ghostly pursuits like stock trading, image making, and opinion polling, real work, and the old-fashioned sense of labor that engages hands as well as eye, that tires the body and directly alters the physical world, tends to vanish from sight. The feminists of my generation tried to bring some of it into the light of day, but like busy professional women fleeing the house in the morning, they left the project unfinished, the debate broken off in mid-sentence, the noble intentions unfulfilled. Sooner or later, someone else will have to finish the job. And that's the end of that chapter. Thanks for joining me. Bye.